Councilmember Zoya. Thank you.
Has staff talked to the county assessor about, to explore with them laying out what the option is here in terms of abandonment versus encroachment and see what they might say?
No, we haven't talked to the county.
Okay. So, my perspective on this in general is Parker's, as everyone knows, and all of you know way more than I know, an unusual situation. And you've been through all kinds of iterations of dealing with this. Clearly, this street was originally designed for a purpose that it isn't serving. And you have a situation where there is a right-of-way on the street that's greater than any other street in Atherton. That seems unfair. That seems like a bureaucratic problem that occurred a long time ago, but the issue's been looked at a lot, and that issue hasn't ever been addressed fundamentally, and I understand that it's now coming up as an opportunity to address it fundamentally, but it's complex because you have to weigh that issue against the fact that people have bought into the property on this street with that current reality. And I think this is one of these semi-judicial assessment situations that we as a council face that's not legislative. And I think it's a very complex balance between those two issues. I think, for me personally, there is no possible way that we as a council should support abandonment without having a real understanding of the tax impact, because I understand from the comments today that there are some people that are opposed to the idea of the abandonment because it will change what you have bought into, and that it will give people a legal right to do some things in a portion of the right-of-way that they didn't have the legal right before, notwithstanding the fact that some people may have done it. It also will give some people additional, if we do the abandonment, it will give some, well, it will probably give all the properties some additional square footage right, which would mean that they could add on to their property. Now, I do understand from the staff report that that additional square footage right is 148 square feet. So it's not an enormous amount, but it's a change. And I think in no event should we make a decision that forces everybody on the street to incur a property tax without really understanding it. And I would say that the minimum, I mean, what I would need to really understand that is to have a conversation between the staff and the assessor to lay out exactly what the abandonment is, because I don't know, maybe there's an easement that goes down both sides of the street, so every property is affected by an easement in that right of way. I don't know.
There are only 2 utilities running through there now, as mentioned in the staff report.
East side of the street.
Yeah, it's only on one side of the street.
Only on one
Northeast.
so
And
there's-
2 ends gas line.
And then we have 2 at the end of the street, we know.
And overhead electric.
3, yeah, 3, because there's overhead lines.
Yeah, I'd like to know what the tax, I think everybody would want to know what the tax impact is, no matter what decision we make. If I were living on the street, I'd sure want to know what that's going to be before I had my representatives make a decision that forces everybody to incur, or potentially incur a tax increase. I think we should check that out.
All right, I guess I'll weigh in a little bit. There's a lot of fear that things are gonna change tomorrow, in my opinion. And this is something that obviously draws a lot of resources. This is something that's very unique. It's not something that is every day. But it seems that over a period of time, people have started to use the encroachment areas as their own, and therefore now we're spending a large amount of resources trying to solve problems. And it's not an easy answer, and not everybody's gonna be happy, and whatever the decision's made, when we sit up here, I assure you there aren't gonna be happy people. It's very difficult for the county assessor's office, obviously, to render an opinion because it's kind of on a one-on-one basis and what those impacts will be in estimation of land value, et cetera, et cetera. And utilities will have an impact on what the value of that land is, and what that reassessment value is. They're not gonna come back and say, well, every parcel's gonna get hit for $300 a year. I can tell you that's the answer right now. It's gonna be, they're gonna say, on a one-to-one basis, it's gonna be like this, a web. And not everybody's gonna be happy with that answer. So when do we stop this process? When everybody's gonna test? I mean, I agree we should find out the extent of the utilities, also in the Parker. But obviously, we have a problem. And we've had a problem for years because a lot of you are the same faces. I've been in those seats and I've seen a lot of those. Most of it was back of the heads because I was in the back row. But a lot of the same people here on these issues related to Parker. It's ridiculous. We've had an incredible amount of time, your time, our all time. And now we're up here trying to clean, or in essence, probably a mess that probably should have been cleaned up a long time ago. And a lot of these things that happen when we buy parcels, we don't know that all these screwed up things are on our parcel. We find out later on, 20 years later, 10 years later, 5 years later, when somebody comes over and says, by the way, do you know Mrs. Jones is doing this? Well, unfortunately, again, we're here to clean up that mess. And again, I apologize to all of you, no matter what side you're on, that unfortunately, it's landed up here again. And it's getting to a point where there will be a decision and not all of you will be happy. We're gonna try to do the best we can, but the resources of this town are being pulled and pulled and pulled. We got neighbors, unfortunately, I just looked at a list, and it's very unhappy. I have unhappy campers. I have people that are willing to take things out that are in the right of way. I get it, but we're at the point where people have gotten to the point like it's the Clampetts against somebody else, and it's just not right. It's not Atherton. It's not why we harmoniously, moved into this town. You all want to get along with your neighbors. You guys live closer, and you probably don't get along more than any other street in this town. It's disappointing. Unfortunately, that's now why we have to get to a point where we have to resolve this. Okay, and then the healing process will begin no matter what our decision is. And I think we will have to look into what the impacts are for the county assessor's office. It sounds like we won't be making a decision this evening related to it. We'll ask for further information, but unfortunately, in some point in the near future, and I will say very near future, we will have to make a decision on this, and some of you will not be happy, and some of you will be happy. And then some of you will be healing, and some of you will be having parties. I don't know. But the reality is, we have to solve the problem. So I think that's what I would have to say with council, with staff, for a little further information, getting us information related to what potentially the county assessor would say to it. And you know, that would give us a little bit more information to try to make a better decision. So we can help you with finding out a little information. So.
Mr. Mayor, Council, just a little clarification on that. It's about $25K for us to do the surveys and easement information and all that. In order for the assessor to make individual property distinctions, they're gonna need that information, so we'll have to spend that money to do that. That's one route. The other route is to just go to the assessor and say, here's what we know, what's your best guess? And then we can bring that back to the council. Which would you prefer?
Okay. Council members, chime in. Let's hear it. Bill?
I think you do I think we need to resolve this very quickly, and make a decision, because as the mayor has pointed out, this has been something that's been festering for quite a while. So I would be in favor of doing the more quick and dirty type of approach as opposed to the detailed $25,000, which is still gonna be questionable at the end of the day anyway.
Yes, I agree with that.
2,
Yeah.
3?
Yeah.
You got 4. That's the
That's
answer.
your direction.
So thank you, and again,
There's no decision.
So I want to thank everybody from Parker for coming out and speaking to us.
we're going to
We're
get
getting
slightly
more
further
information.
information. Please,
Did the council want to continue that to the next meeting?
please, let's continue that item to the next meeting.
Well, can we get the information in that enough time?
Right, which is why I
Yes,
was gonna suggest that we
subject to, if
continue
worst
it.
case scenario, we continue it again, right?
Right.
But you should have an answer.
That's fine.
Just-
All right, so for a point of clarity for everybody in the audience, that obviously, I think we were even shocked a little bit, we're gonna get a little additional information related to the assessed amount changes potentially from the county assessor's office. We're gonna bring it back before us at the next council meeting. It's
May 21st?
May 21st, still an open item, and so actually, no decision on that item has been made this evening. We're continuing it to the next meeting.
If we don't have the information by May 21st, by that meeting, we'll send out a notice to the property owners letting you know when the next one is.
So if everybody didn't hear that, so if in fact we don't have that information, the town of Atherton will send you notification stating we are not prepared, we're going to continue the item to the following month until we can get the answers for you. We won't force you to come in and just hear us talk. Questions, real quick questions solely on this?
Just a question on
Please.
exactly this.
Yes.
One of the recommendations was that, by the staff, was that the staff continue to develop the encroachment policy, because it sounds like the town wants to do that anyway.
That's true.
Is
Yes.
that going to be?
Matter of fact, thank you for bringing that up, since that is actually a second part of this particular thing. The first part, that ship sailed till next month. Let's go ahead and address that particular topic so that you'll all hear the answer. And I think that you're gonna hear that everybody here is willing to say that we do support us re-looking at that as per the recommendations from staff for townwide.
Which,
Correct.
which
Yeah,
we're
we need
doing.
that for the bike
We're
plan.
doing that.
We're doing that, so
on-
yes, we are gonna
ongoing.
look into it.
Right
Staff's
now.
gonna come up with a written clarity for us, so you're gonna be able to read that as well. I don't know how quickly that'll happen, but
That's,
Well,
well, probably a
that's-
longer process.
But that's gonna take into consideration those alternatives that we talked about on the bike ped plan, and it will
Yes.
factor into our planning process when people are bringing in their plans for updates.
So-
Clarity.
please.
My understanding is you want to put in place a form of agreement that people will sign covering the right-of-way and encroachment issues, which will be used in the course of the bike path, but is something that we need, isn't dependent on the bike path. It's
Exactly
something we
right.
want to put in place
We
anyway.
have that now, we have it now, it's just not very,
Not that good.
it's not very modern, and it's not very effective.
No, so I understand that staff wants to update it
Yes.
Right.
and make it available and apply it to the entire town.
Right.
Yes.
So we'll give the clarity so it'll have more details. So we're cleaning up it in
So,
essence.
do
Yeah,
we
but
need a
the
motion on
encroachment
that?
issues offer safety impacts for bicycle riders and people that hit their head on a rock, and people that can't, when they go to a party, they can't pull over and park because there isn't enough parking, because somebody's encroached within that property. It doesn't create a formality within
We're sort
the
of
area in general.
We're off the
Yeah.
agenda now, I think we need to keep that
Well,
for, that's a good
we're cleaning it up.
conversation for the next one.
Okay. No, we don't need a staff direction. All right, perfect, thank you, and everybody, we will keep you all informed. You watch the website, that'll come up as well. But we're gonna move on to item number 26.
So you can enforce the code of the people that are currently infringing and have it removed now.
We do enforce the code on a complaint basis, and we do allow, if somebody complains, we go out and we look at it. If the code enforcement officer and the planning staff don't believe it's a safety problem right now, then we issue them an encroachment permit just for that very reason.
And if your question is solely to Parker, everything on Parker's on hold till we make decisions.
Yeah.
So,
Everything
until,
Parker's-
everything. So, we'll make decisions, we'll get clarity, everybody will, I told you, happy faces, not happy faces. So, that's gonna happen. All right, we're sorry, nothing meant, just, some people are gonna be happy, some aren't. We're gonna work with everyone to try to resolve this problem. Everybody's gonna get an answer. It's just not today.
I'm just tired of people building illegally and getting away with it, that's all.
I get it. We hear all of you. No worries. All right, we're gonna move on to item number 26. Thank you. Provide direction to staff for development of tennis facility management bid packet. Mike Kashwagi.
Yes, Mayor Reese, members of the City Council, in January of 2014, Council approved a contract with Alan Margot, the town's longtime tennis professional. This was a short-term contract which expires on June 30th of this year. Moving forward, staff recommends an open solicitation to provide recreational tennis programs and instruction for the town. Accordingly, staff is seeking City Council direction and approval to prepare a request for bid for this service. The staff report outlines business points and responsibilities which will be included in the request for bid. Staff recommends a market-driven approach with exclusive rights to the selected vendor to provide fee-based tennis programs and tennis instructions. In return, the town would outline minimum requirements in terms of tennis programs and events, and will also require the selected vendor to provide personnel necessary to manage, operate, and market the tennis programs and activities. With your approval, staff will return in May with the request for bid for council review and approval.
Thank you, Mike. Questions for staff?
One of the items that you've put in the suggestions was the private lessons. And as we've heard, while there are private lessons going on by our current tennis pro on the courts and by other pros as well, I guess the question would be, do you have a proposal or are you going to ask the applicants to put in a proposal of how they would monitor that and control that? Because that seems to be one of the sticking points with what we've got today.
Well, one of the recommendations of staff with this is that whoever selected would have that exclusive right. So in other words, only that selected vendor would have the ability to provide lessons at the tennis courts in Wilbur Palmer Park.
So if Mr. Rochner, who's out there in the audience, is friends with Mr. Margot, I'm just using you as an example.
Because he can see.
He could, have his key, because he's an Atherton resident, he could come in and Mr. Margot or some other pro could be playing with him and then giving him some pointers as they're playing, and essentially he'd be getting a lesson, but it wouldn't be a lesson.
Well, I guess.
So, I mean, that's one of the issues we have.
If money is changing hands, I mean, if you're paying a tennis pro, to then give you a lesson off that is not using the exclusive tennis pro, it's hard to police that.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
It's
How are we
going to
gonna
be
do that?
difficult to police in
Yes.
many circumstances, but at the same time, if there's some guy out there with a bag of balls at the net, hitting shot after shot to somebody, that's a lesson.
As we see today.
I think we can
As
I think that we can, and the tennis professional who has the exclusive right, who has a monetary interest in making sure that it's only, if a tennis pro wants to play with somebody, then so be it.
Well-
But if the tennis pro wants to stand there and give a lesson, then that impacts that guy's.
Well, the point of my comment is that that's been a sticking point, and so I would suggest that you ask them to propose, perhaps a methodology that they would like to propose, because we don't have all the ideas, and they may. So on some of these things that have come up in the past, I would like to see, you consider putting in the RFP, soliciting their ideas of how they might police this or how they might control it, and what steps they may take, or they would want us to help them with, to do that. But I think this is a great idea. I think that, whether we stay with our existing pro, who a lot of people in town know and love, but we expand the program and put more emphasis in it, or whether or not we make a change and get something new, that would be great. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Bill. Any other questions from the council?
I have a question.
You wait till the end of the meeting to do that.
So you can have a mic in your face all night. Hi.
Mike, does staff consider it as an important part of this proposal for a tennis facility management to have the exclusivity as to these private lessons?
That's kind of the incentive for the
Right.
vendor, so.
That's the incentive,
It
is
could be an
exclusive?
incentive for the vendor to be able to have courts as private lessons and
To control.
to control them, yeah.
In essence, very similar to our vendor.
Yes.
If you want to get a lesson on that court, you have to get it from me, and I make money.
That's right. And you have the Rolodex.
Or we can make that the best looking court and have a special lock on it that only the pro would have access to, or something like that, maybe with a TV camera or something. Yeah.
All right, any questions from the audience, the public?
Public comment?
Public comments? Seeing none, closing public comments, back to council. If you haven't made any comments yet, and you'd like to make some,
I just don't, we are just agonizing about this tennis contract. I don't know why it's so hard. I mean, there has to be other jurisdictions that have very successful tennis programs in our area that we could, maybe model this after. I would think that there is, it says that we get $1,600 in our 2013-2014 budget for revenue from our tennis pro. That's nothing. We should be getting, I don't know, $20,000, $50,000, $100,000. I mean, I would think that with a really well-run and well-promoted tennis program, our tennis courts could be a really significant revenue generator. So I know Alan has been with us a long, long time. He runs the tennis camps. I mean, I even took tennis lessons from him. I mean, he's great. I just don't see that it's been that much of a benefit to the town monetarily. And so to go out with RFP and try to expand the possibilities, I think it's something that we really need to do. That's how I feel.
Thank you. Vice Mayor DeGolia.
Well, I mean, I think we should do this. I think that we should have a tennis contract. My question about this is, from observing the conversation that I observed from the floor, and then a little bit once I got elected, the challenge with Alan partly had to do with the exclusivity of private lessons and plenty of allegations that he was offering private lessons and not disclosing it. And I don't know how you enforce that. I'm not familiar with the tennis programs. I don't play tennis, but it seems to me that this is a hard thing to enforce, because anybody with a key can bring somebody who's going to work with them, whether they have a stack of balls or they don't have a stack of balls. And I guess I find it hard to believe that the carrot to be able to manage a tennis program in Atherton where you can do camps and you can do group lessons for adults and for children, that the whole carrot is private lesson exclusivity. That just doesn't make sense to me.
It's just staff direction. So I think that you have enough for staff direction?
Yes, we do.
Beautiful. And let's go ahead and close that item and move on to the item that was pulled by Vice Mayor DeGolia, item number 19. The Drainage Master Plan Amendment to NB5 contract. Mike Kaswagi.
I don't really have any more information on the report. If there's any specific questions that the council might have.
Thank you, Mike. We're going to find out if there's going to be a question. Vice Mayor DeGolia.
Okay, so this proposal is that there are sort of three tasks that are being asked of the consultant, and I'm focused on the third task. Well, let's just note that the first task is to do an assessment of what the detention volumes would be for our channel in a 10, 25, 50, and 100-year storm. And this is relevant because our channel can only handle the volume that results from a 7-year storm. So obviously there's going to be excess water, and we're going to have a really serious problem anywhere where the culvert goes under the street, or where you run into a box like you do at Alameda, where the channel hits Alameda. Here's my question. Is the detention basin design at a conceptual level is the third task that they're asked to do, and they're asked to do it at a 10-year storm. And I understand that conceptual design involves considerably more work than just doing an assessment of what the detention volumes are. But I question whether we should be having them do that for a 10-year storm versus a more significant storm. And I understand that it will be more costly to do an assessment for a 100-year storm because we'd have a lot of problems. But given the way that weather is hitting 100-year marks all over the country, you know, over these last few years, it makes me very concerned that we could easily see a storm hit us one winter that's significantly more than a 10-year storm. Maybe not a 100-year storm, but I don't know what the costs are to assess at a conceptual level what the retention basin design would need to be for a 25-year storm versus a 10-year storm. And that's my opinion.
Sure. Well, the thought process behind that is, first of all, this detention is not going to be within the existing channel. It's going to be some location outside of the channel where when the storm exceeds that 7-year storm, water would be diverted to somewhere close to the channel, but not in the channel. And so the reason why we wanted the consultant to look at the 25-1500 is just to take a look at, okay, so what volume would you need? And then the next question is, okay, here in the town of Atherton, where could you actually put it?
Where would you put it?
And so in looking at the potential, sites, really there's only one site that is under control of the town, and that's Holbrook Palmer Park. And given the size of the park and the activities in the park, it's just a belief that, there isn't a whole lot of storage retention capability in the town. And so the rationale behind the 10-year storm is because typically, that's a typical design standard for communities, is to design for a 10-year event. And but if, as they do this work, if we find that a 25-year storm is possible to retain that, well then, we may be coming back to you and say, we ought to take a look at doing a little conceptual design for that as well. But at this point, because one of the outcomes of the work done so far is to let the town know that the existing channel is only good for a 7-year event. And so we thought that it was prudent to at least try to get capacity for at least a 10-year storm, which is a normal design standard for municipalities throughout California.
Thank you, Mike. No, absolutely.
So like, storms, they come, they flood. Every time it rains, a river runs in front of my house down Alejandro, because it all flows, above ground to El Camino and then drains in. It could be flooded. I can go out there and wade up to my knees in it. And then in a couple hours, it goes away. So if Holbrook Palmer Park is flooded with a 10-year storm, if we use that as overflow for a 10 years, or even a 25, how much water are we talking about, and how long would it stay? Would it, percolate away? Would it drain away quickly? Would it be there for weeks? Would, months?
I don't know, that's the purpose of
That's the
this
purpose of what
work.
we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead, Vice Mayor DuBois.
I mean, I understand what you said. That makes perfect sense. The fact that 10-year storm assessment is standard for municipalities sounds convincing. I guess I am concerned, given what we're observing in the weather, that if we could have done something that would provide some safety to our residents, if we had done the conceptual design for a 25-year storm, which we miss because we only did a 10-year storm, I get concerned. That's my issue. So you did the assessment of what the dollar cost would be, or you got input from a consultant about what the dollar cost would be to task out the conceptual design for a 10-year storm. I'd like to know, if the 25-year assessment is, not outrageously expensive, but within the range of that, it seems to me like it'd be more protective to the town for us to do that.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Councilman Whitmer? Any questions? Sorry.
I'd like to,
No, I don't have a problem, I'd like to know the cost of the 25-year before we go ahead and say, let's just go do that, but, Yeah, I think that the prudent thing on the 10-year is based on your recommendation is you know, it's prudent, and I support at least doing that. And I agree with you on with regards to the park being the location. I guess the question would be, though, we would have to first off shave part of the channel down so the water would come out. But then the second, you know, question would be, I guess, is will there be an analysis that says that, you know, the water is running, as you know, and so it's not until it gets to the park that we can drain some of it out. So I guess the intention would be that initially it would be flooding downstream or upstream, and then it would get to the park, and then that would allow more to be drawn through. Is that the intention?
Well, I mean, what they looked at so far is that there's a portion of the channel that goes right along the park.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And the capacity of that, you know, a storm greater than a 7-year event will exceed the capacity.
Correct. Correct, but there'll be
So-
flooding downstream because there's a box culvert coming to there.
Well, that's right, and depending, I mean, this gets very complicated because it goes all the way to the bay, right? So, you know, and the study that we have at this time isn't that huge extensive study that goes all the way out to the bay. It's really to take a look at, you know, existing drainage, you know, historical drainage here within the town, and then to identify areas to improve that protection.
Right.
So,
Okay. And this information is also needed for the FEMA analysis, is that?
well, there is no FEMA.
Well, FEMA contacted, I mentioned to members of the council that we've been contacted by FEMA, and we don't have a flood insurance rate map right now, and
We don't want to have one
we
either.
don't really want to have
We
one.
really don't want one.
Exactly, so if we had our own data that addressed our own issues, this would be helpful if that ever did come to pass.
So
Councilwoman Lewis.
they will not just look at the park. They will look at the entire length of the channel. I mean, and to the extent that if there's any way further up the hill that there's any, you know, release valves or areas, they would look at all of that, right?
Yes, they will,
It's
they
gonna be
will,
Los Lumitas School. is
Yeah,
where
that's,
it's gonna
Okay.
hit.
it's gonna be where we
So-
get the retention.
Correct.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not a retention, it's probably not a retention
It would
zone,
just
but
be,
it's gonna hit Los Lumitas School.
right, yeah, okay, so,
I mean, yes, I mean, they will look at potential sites. I mean, there's the schools, there's also the circus club. I mean, again, where you have basically, so that, again, these are just potential sites. And so that's where, you know,
you really didn't say that, did you?
You did.
I'm sorry I did,
Sorry.
but,
All public and private property along the
yes.
channel.
Okay.
yes.
Still the pool.
So, you know, but it's very limited, as you know,
Yeah.
there just isn't a lot of choices.
Perfect. It's
Okay.
no more question. I have a question.
Can we
So I'm
amend
happy
it?
to approve this the way it is, so that we can move forward and ask that in the course of initiating the work, that we get an estimate for how much it would cost to go to the 25-year level for the conceptual design.
Okay.
And can I
We'll-
make one additional comment, please? And I will make it very quick. Thank you, Carrie.
I was gonna throw it out to the public then, but that's okay.
Okay.
I'm just trying to.
I think that one of the things,
Try.
Sorry.
one of the things, Mike, would it be possible, you know, of course, a lot of our water starts coming from another town, and that it seems to be building, you know, a lot of horse farms and things like that up around that area as that popular sport is growing, and so there's more and more covered area, which is causing more and more runoff. As one of the things they're gonna look at is also the analysis of where the water's coming from, and then maybe kind of make a benchmark so that we kind of know where we are, and we would then have that for assessing EIRs that are coming forward as the additional construction comes up where we could then go back and talk to Portola Valley.
Yeah,
Yes,
then
they
we get money.
already had that information, and in fact, at our May 7th council workshop, we are gonna be talking about the drainage master plan, and the consultant will be here to provide a status of the work completed to date, what their findings are, and I think they'll be able to answer that exact question.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, and can I just get back into the process here? Thank you, sorry. We're just gonna go ahead and open it up to public comments on this topic. Seeing no public comments, we're gonna close public comments, bring it back. Okay, so we did that, so you guys thought I didn't do it, okay, now we are. All right, so any final?
Thank you, Vice Mayor, for bringing this for discussion. It was a good discussion, so maybe you can
Have a motion,
make your motion.
I'm happy to make a motion, although I've now left
Put
item
it,
one.
left the
Just say
dice.
approved number.
I'm happy to approve staff recommendation on item 26.
19.
19, that's right, we're off 26.
Well, you
And
did
ask that in the course of the work with the consultant that initiates this, to have them provide us with an estimate for what the cost would be for the conceptual design to go to 25.
Second.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No, that was a 4-0. So,
That's good.
all right, so let's go ahead and thank you, everybody. We're moving on to our final items, and we're almost to where we're at. Council reports, anybody have any comments on council reports? Seeing none, thank you very much,
I
gentlemen.
just want to make a point that I did submit one.
We'll put that on the record. She did submit her council report. All right, thank you. Future agenda items?
No.
Seeing none, final public comments? Seeing none, closing now. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Well, you guys worked me to death today. All in favor, aye.
After.